Ya ve que como así.
How come we don't see that?
Is it just me or is there no sound coming from Chambers?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can.
Bonsoir, good evening. Bienvenue à notre réunion spéciale de conseil. Welcome to a special council meeting. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest, aucune déclaration d'intérêt pécuniaire? Hearing none. Is there a mover and a seconder for the agenda? Conseiller Yvon, Conseiller Chris.
It is moved by Councillor Duhaime and seconded by Councillor Fisher. Be it resolved that the agenda for the meeting of council held on June 15th, 2022 be adopted as presented.
Are there any objections? Aucune objection? Hearing none. Carried. Okay, so this evening amongst council, we have our facilitator appointed by the minister, Mr. Nigel Bell-Chamber, the observer from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Miss Kathy Horgan. And this is the third meeting that we are dealing with the process pertaining to the council vacancy appointment. At the last meeting, council had agreed by a motion to provide direction to Mr. Bell-Chamber, our clerk, to seek information pertaining to a tie-breaking in the event that that would be the issue, with the ultimate goal that there would be a candidate that would be appointed by motion to fill the vacancy for Ward 7. We have 6 candidates so far that submitted their nomination. They had the opportunity to present themselves at the last meeting. They also had the opportunity to be asked questions by Mr. Bell-Chamber, and council received this information. So to start off the meeting, maybe what I'll do is I'll pass it on to Mr. Bell-Chamber if he has a few words of wisdom for council, and if there's any information to be provided as well.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Am I coming through clearly enough in terms of volume? We okay?
Yes.
Good, thank you. As we were directed, your clerk and I met by electronic means with your solicitor early Monday morning, excuse me, and explained to him the situation that had arisen and what the direction was and what we thought council was looking for. And he proceeded to do some research. In fact, he received a written request from the clerk in advance. So he had done some initial research and provided a broad draft. The clerk and I spoke to him about some practicalities within that draft, and he made some revisions. And in fact, that was the first version that you saw. We did respond to him that it had not covered the possibility of electronic participation, such as we see tonight from the majority of the members, I believe, or at least 4 of the members or 5 of the members I've got on screen. And that needed to be incorporated. So he did. He amended the procedure, delivered it to the clerk, and that was sent out to all members of council and posted on the website with the agenda. What he did is he took processes that he had seen elsewhere and also the process that had existed previously in the Municipal Act, and considered his interpretation of Section 8.2 of the Municipal Act in terms of broad interpretation of powers. And his advice, as you received in the opinion letter, is that council could in fact adopt a policy such as this to deal with vacancies where you're considering an appointment. Without getting into the details of it, he suggested that you are currently at Section 1.71. You've completed up to that section. He highlighted that in yellow for your benefit. And the sections that he amended from the first one that was circulated are highlighted in gray on what you saw before you. That those colors wouldn't go in the bylaw that you would consider, but it's just for your benefit. I think it's fairly straightforward in terms of how the process would occur. The one, I'll call it wrinkle, the one consideration is the electronic voting, where members aren't possible to be in the room and can't vote on equal size cards and deliver them to the clerk. And what he's put in there is a process that asks every member of council voting electronically who's indicating their vote to take a 8.5 by 11 sheet of plain paper like this, and clearly, when the occasion arises, write the candidate's name on it that they prefer. And obviously that may show up backwards on yours, but nevertheless, I think it can be interpreted. And when their name is called, to display that. That would be the process that is recommended. That's just a simple reenactment of the process, just so you understand it. That's the outline of the process, and happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure as the clerk, on any other practicalities of it. I think it's a process that could work, and the question, and it's one that your solicitor could stand by if there was any kind of a legal challenge, which is an important consideration. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Belchamper. And I want to commend you both for seeking the information and bring this forward. My train of thought is we received correspondence from the lawyer, Mr. Edward Boom from Russell Christie, which was addressed to our clerk, that provides background information and the research that was done and putting together a recommended policy to council. So I think if there's any questions, I thought I was going to ask the issue pertaining to any questions pertaining to the letter of Mr. Ed Boom. And after that, go through the policy to make sure that it's clearly understood by each member of council, and then proceed with a motion to adopt the policy. I think council's been told in the past by the ministry that if we don't have a policy, put a policy together, and your policy is your framework for decision making. Once the policy is adopted, then we can proceed with the actual vote, and hopefully by the end of this evening, have a candidate that will be appointed to Ward 7. So are there any questions or comments pertaining to the actual letter that council was provided?
Just a question, because I know we are in section number, will be starting at 1.7, but is this the bylaw that,
Gonzalez, the question is that for the letter.
okay, but it had to do with the letter, so whatever, is it gonna be used for, like, if we're passing that, that's gonna be used for the, because the advice of the lawyer is in the bylaw, so. I'm just saying, is this policy that the lawyer recommend to us will be set up as a policy for West Nipissing Council
Yes.
for the next council?
Yes.
Thank you, that was my
Yes.
question. Thank you.
If there's no question, I do have a comment, and with due respect, on the first page from the law firm Russell Christie, the lawyer made reference, although that there was a tie vote, that was not actually a vote on the appointment of the named individual. Council recognized that the defeated vote on giving direction was a clear indication. So I've always been firm on our procedures. Our procedures do make reference that when we do vote on a motion and the motion was defeated, if we wish to reconsider that decision, that there's a mechanism to do it if there's a prevailing member from council that has changed their mind, or that they want to bring back that motion that was defeated for reconsideration. Councillor Elise?
Again, I would like to put a motion on the floor then to, that I wish to put a motion to take and to establish that the vote that was taken in the last meeting and defeated, that be appealed, and that Monsieur Roberge have the right to participate in the process that for tonight. So since I'm the one that had voted part of the defeat, I can bring it up to the table, and I wish that everybody will support that, because we did not have a process. We had asked at the beginning, but it was not approved. And I think it's only fair that Monsieur Roberge, as the other one, have a shot again, because I'm not here to be me. So that's, but I don't know, so I guess I need a seconder, and
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
And just a point of clarification, is it appealed or abolished?
abolish.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Now-
je dis le dire en français comme je voulais le dire en français, puis j'ai changé mon idée.
Dis en français. Dis en français.
Ben, c'est ça, je mets une motion sur la table pour que nous reconsidération, puis qu'on abolish, no, I don't know what it is in French, that's nice, eh?
Abolir.
Pardon?
Abolir.
Abolir la motion qui avait été acceptée, que les votes qui avaient été faits pour appointer M. Roberge et qui étaient défaits soient reconsidérés, puis que M. Roberge ait le droit de participer ce soir dans le processus qui a été établi, comme demandé par le Conseil, alors qu'on retire ça. Ça, tu fais-tu plus de bon sens? OK, merci.
Are there any discussions?
We should probably translate for Mr. Belchamber.
Okay, well, Councillor Elise translated what she was proposing. There's a motion on the floor from a prevailing member that defeated the motion of last week to appoint the nominee, Monsieur Roberge, to the vacancy of Ward 7, which was defeated, that motion of last week be abolished to ensure that Monsieur Roberge is included in the process identified as per the policy. Discussion, Conseiller Dan.
My question through you, Madam Mayor, to Nigel is the process that you're outlining right now, Nigel, includes everybody. It doesn't exclude, regardless of the procedure that was taken. Procedurally, we were in no man's territory, and that I think that, or no person's territory, and I think that even saying what we're saying procedurally is wrong. And I would like your comments, because I don't think that it's fair that we should have voted. We should have voted on the other candidates, and that was thrown out at the last meeting. So I think this is totally unfair, and that it shouldn't be on the table. And procedurally, I don't think we're right. So Nigel, I'd like your interpretation of that, please.
With your permission, Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I think the motion that's on the floor at the moment isn't truly a motion to reconsider. It's a different motion. I think I had the discussion with the solicitor, and he and I were of the same opinion that the motion directing the clerk to bring forward a bylaw last meeting was a procedural motion only rather than a substantive motion. And that in fact, this policy, if adopted, starting at 17.1 would start with the 6 candidates that were before council at that time. So I don't see that the motion that's on the floor right now is really necessary. If you wish to make it clear, I would suggest that when the time comes to put the motion to adopt the policy on the floor, that and the bylaw, and that motion include confirmation that the 6 candidates, all 6 candidates that were presented at the previous meeting would be included in the process.
okay.
I think it achieves the same objective if that's the intention of the mover.
Yeah, well, I think probably the intent of the mover is to make sure that it's well recorded, and that I do know for some, following our procedures is an issue that they hold dear at heart. When you look at our procedural bylaw, it says when a council or committee has decided either for or against a certain question. So the question that was put forward last week was, does council support appointing Monsieur Roberge to Ward 7?
Mhm.
And that was voted by each member of council, and it was defeated. So my opinion is that we have an elected official that's coming forward just saying that I wish to abolish that motion to ensure it's on record that whatever decision that was made last week be disregarded, and that we start with a clean slate of the 6 candidates. So I don't, it could be a difference in interpretation, but our procedural bylaw is quite clear in that wording.
Madam Mayor.
Conseil.
Well, my only reason to do it, obviously, was to do the right thing. And as far as I'm concerned, was a meeting council. It was adopted. There will be minutes from that meeting. There were a motion on the floor. So it's part of a procedure. By all means, if you want to add it to this, I think it's just a show of faith that we're not trying to take advantage of everything, because the reality is it was a meeting, and it was a legal meeting also. It was public, it was recorded. So I don't know why then we have policy, we don't follow it. And it is a policy that we have, and it's like any other meeting. So if you don't want to do it, it doesn't matter, it doesn't change my mind. I want in there, it's going to be there either way. So it was just a show of good faith, and I was hopefully that the other one, knowing all my colleagues, they would support that, obviously, because one way or the other, it is what it is. But let's go on and.
Conseil Dan. Conseil Dan, you had your hand up.
No, again, I think the procedure that you're quoting procedural bylaws and you're quoting this and that. I think in all fairness, one has to have some logic behind this. And the thing is that I don't think it is. No, Madam, would you let me continue, please? I don't think that we've been just advised by Nigel of a process, and that it was there would be in good faith the way Nigel basically presented it to us, and I think we should stick to that.
But I just want to clarify your comment, Conseil Dan. It is your procedures, and that's what it states. When
Madam
you
Mayor,
decide, I'm quoting your procedural bylaw. I'm not getting
you're hiding behind procedural bylaw again.
Well, that's why we have policies, and that's why we're moving forward to adopt a policy for a time breaking. So are there any further comments for him? Motion that's been presented, Conseil Denis?
Madam Mayor, I think this is just a matter of cleaning up. there's no reason to leave that motion in the books. It could come back and haunt us. We never know.
You take it out.
So we're trying to work in good faith here and remove it from the records. So if you don't want it, we'll leave it there and.
Well, we'll call it to a vote.
Yeah, sure. But I think it's just a matter of cleaning up. I don't know.
I'd like a recorded vote, please.
And I think, and please excuse me if I'm incorrect, Mr. Belchamber, did you not state that the motion that was made at the last meeting was not a motion to appoint? It was in fact a motion to direct me to prepare a bylaw?
I believe, well, you have the record and you took the motion.
I do, and the wording of the bylaw, or the wording of the motion was to direct the clerk to prepare a bylaw. So there was no actual vote on the bylaw.
Correct.
No, that's why we,
So there was no vote actually on for the individual. It was a vote on a procedure,
Not,
which was defeated, correct?
vote were.
but there was a name that was presented. And
Your
that
worship,
name,
Your Worship, if I could interject.
Yes.
Motion to abolish a motion that took place before, however you word it, does not ever change the former minutes. You can't change what happened at a previous council meeting. So that motion and its disposition will be in those minutes forever. A motion today doesn't erase it. I heard people talk about erasing it from the record. That just doesn't happen.
Can I ask one last comment on my part? My question to you, could it be challenged in law? Because first of all, I want to clarify that you presented something, but it was on the advice of a lawyer. That's why you discussed. So it's not just you that's bringing us to attention. It was done with the lawyer help. So just to clarify that it's not you that's giving us that, but it's on a lawyer's advice. And my question to you, could we be challenged that in court of law? Because the motion will remain on the floor. I mean, on the minutes. And there were two motions, and both were rejected. You're right. But we did vote on the name.
I'm sorry, I can give you advice from experience, but I can't give you legal advice.
Okay, well, okay. I'm okay with that. Let's go.
Okay, well, the motion is there, so since it was presented on the floor and seconded,
Wow.
I'll just let it be read by the clerk and vote on the issue.
So it was, as I recall, it was seconded by Councillor Denis. It was moved by Councillor Lee Senecal and seconded by Councillor Denis Senecal that the motion of June the 9th to appoint Mr. Roberge would be abolished.
Those in favor? Carried. Are there any other issues pertaining to the letter from the lawyer? None? Can we proceed to the proposed policy to fill the vacancy? And then this way, if there's any questions, making sure that each member of council that comes conseil est clair sur leur mardi. Because after, maybe we should have a more policy so we can entertain that discussion.
Mover and a seconder.
Okay, is there a mover and a seconder for the recommended policy? Conseiller Chris, Conseiller Denis.
It is moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Denis Senecal. Be it resolved, the bylaw number 2022-57 being a bylaw to adopt a council vacancy policy shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Okay, so just to be transparent, for the public to understand what the policy states, if there's no objection, I'll just go through the bullet points. A vote, and as Mr. Belchamber said, there are already some steps within the policy that have been done, and we're not going to be rehashing those steps. We're just going to continue where we left off. So the vote to fill a vacancy on council by appointment.
Madam Mayor, I'm just wondering, why are you reading it out? Shouldn't it be Mr. Bellchamber and explaining the highlights, and then we can ask questions as we go, because they're the author of this document, and I think it would be more transparent that if it's Nigel that walks us through and basically gives us the cold notes of the process.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor
The point
Elise.
of order is you're the chair of that meeting, and you will pass, I'm sure, the floor to Mr. because as you did at the last meeting. So your job as a chair is to chair this meeting. And if Mr. Cameron disagree with that, I don't see any reason because he knows you're gonna pass it to him. So, I mean,
Thank you, Councillor Elise and Councillor Dan's request. I was planning on going through it, and if there were questions, I was planning on asking our facilitator and our clerk to be able to elaborate to make sure that we had the answers. Is there any further objections? Any objections, Mr. Bellchamber, that I proceed that way? I was proposing to go through the bullets, and if there's any questions of members, that the question would be directed to you or to the clerk to be able to respond. Are we comfortable with that?
That's fine with me.
Okay, thank you. So the first one is a vote to fill a vacancy on council by appointment. It's going to occur in an open council meeting. The second one is the requirement of a procedural bylaw is amended. The agenda for the meeting shall be set by the clerk. There's going to be a certified list of all candidates listed in alphabetical order by last name. Any personal statement of qualifications for consideration of council, if applicable. This bullet is highlighted on our document. I'll ask Mr. Bellchamber or our clerk to be able to identify why it's highlighted.
The indication from the solicitor was in their discussions, you've already received this. That's complete. Up to
that,
0.22.
okay. That was in regards to the letters. They were in a confidential closed agenda.
Yep.
Because they could contain personal identifiers.
Yep.
And at the meeting, the following will take, the chair will make a short statement of the purpose of the meeting, the general order of the proceedings. The clerk will provide to the chair a list of all names of qualified applicants, and the chair will call for a motion from council in the following form, that the following individuals who have signified in writing that they are legally qualified to hold office and consented to accept the office if they are appointed to fill the council vacancy be considered for appointment to fill such vacancy. 1.4, candidates will be sequestered in an adjacent room until it is their time to answer the questions posed by council. Once a candidate has answered the questions, they may remain in the council chamber. Now, that bullet is highlighted, Councillor Elise.
I have a question about that, and I have a problem with that, and I think it's an open meeting, the vote is open. With technology today, they're gonna go and they're gonna, no, I think the last time that was the right way to do it, and I don't see anything to change it, so.
Eleni?
I just wanted to comment that I think Mr. Bellchamber had said that the items that are in highlighted, they're highlighted because those things have already happened. And we don't need to do those things.
I know, but we still need to adopt the policy this evening.
So
maybe a question here is, we had that discussion last week, and according to the Municipal Act, being an open meeting, it's difficult to tell people to leave a meeting. I would definitely not want our policy to contravene the act. And it was a valid explanation, and the fact that we're live streamed. Candidates can be asked to sit in another room and they can live stream the meeting and they have access to the information. I'm not comfortable to ask candidates to leave a room. It's not a job interview. It should be open, should be transparent to all. So I'll ask Mr. Bellchamber if he has any further comments, and then Councillor Dan, you have your hand up. I'll pass it to you after.
Your worship, I've read this several times, and I think I'm still of the opinion that you cannot force them to leave the council chambers, but candidates, I would suggest when you do adopt the policy, you could achieve the same thing, meet the law, but meet the spirit of the sequestration by saying candidates will be asked to sequester in an adjacent room. That, I think, addresses or attempts to address the question that the comment that Councillor Rovita made last time about what's the fairness to be able to listen to others. You can't force it, but I think you can request it. So if you were considering an amendment, I don't think there's any great difficulty if you say candidates will be asked to sequester rather than
And they
sequester.
can,
And if they are asked, they don't need to if they don't want to.
Well, you can't force them.
Okay, no, I just want to clarify. Councillor Dan?
That was the point that I was going to make, and Nigel, you did answer it. And the thing is what I'm a little worried about, if we're going to come and we're going to pass this policy, does that mean that what we did in the past was wrong? Well, first of all, it's demonstrating it was wrong. Does that have an issue with passing this? Because we've already contravened and we've compromised our own policy. But
No.
I'd like your explanation on that, Nigel.
You have, where you have a policy, as long as it's within the law, you can change it as you go forward. So adopting a different policy doesn't make what you did in the past illegal.
Okay, thank you.
It's not retroactive.
Okay, thank you very much. That explains it. Thanks.
Councillor Chris?
So I think the next council will want to look at this policy anyway. I think we're just really adopting this for now. And, next council might want to make some amendments and have a council vacancy policy. And it might say things like, oh, if it's within, the first 2.5 years, you have a by-election, and if this, that, and there's all kinds of changes that can be made to make it a much more robust policy. But for right now, this just gives us what we need for now. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Hey, Denny?
So you, Madam Mayor, I don't see why we'd leave that in there when it's not necessary. It's only going to complicate further appointments later, maybe the next term, but there's not an absolute reason to have this on there. It's just confusing matters, and if we're going to adopt this policy, we might as well try and make it as clean as we can. So I would suggest we take it out right now.
Okay, is there a seconder pertaining to the,
I do.
okay? I'll just ask, is the fact that we're having that discussion for 1.4, and it's not to change what we did last week, because we're just going to start where we left off last week with the vote. So who's in favor of that 1.4 for transparency, that candidates can remain in the room?
Your worship, if I might interrupt, just for clarity, it's probably best if you wait until the end of the consideration of the document, and then rather than having a series of amendments tacked on, you have a motion to adopt the policy with the following amendments, because there may be one or more,
Okay,
and that you're just dealing with one. That's easier. You could do amendment by amendment, but you don't actually have the bylaw or the policy on the floor at the moment, I don't believe.
okay,
Okay.
okay. I agree with that.
Just to clarify, Madam Mayor,
Councillor Denny,
are we going to go through the amendments one by one, or are we going to?
they're being noted by the
We're
clerk.
not going to group them at the end. We're going to still go one by one
Well,
through the amendments that we find in the others.
who feels comfortable to proceed as per the suggestion of Mr. Belchamber?
Just asking if we will deal with each amendment separately. That's all I'm asking.
Okay,
You don't have to.
how about we see how many amendments there are? Maybe there's not many, maybe there's not even
Yours better.
But,
Consadis.
well, I think what Councillor Senecal is saying that we're going to have the chance to keep on discussing and adding it, because I understand that it would be more one motion to, if we do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay.
wait till the end, and depending on what's being proposed as far as changes, then we can deal with it with just one motion with the changes recommended.
Okay.
The other bullet talks about the opportunity to address council, the timeline, 10 minutes, the order of the speaking. And the clerk's going to make, announce the name of the candidate and such paper who will be summoned from the adjacent room. Here again, maybe adjacent room that would be subject to review pending 1.4. Each member of council will be permitted 2 questions to each candidate. Candidates shall be limited to a maximum of 2 minutes per question. And upon hearing all the submissions of the candidate, then council proceeds to a vote as follows. And that's really where we're starting this evening. So, pertaining to the vote, members of council will vote by way of public vote as per the Municipal Act. Candidate names will be displayed on the flipboard or screen to be visual in alphabetical order in the council chambers. Members of council will vote for one candidate only in each applicable round of voting. Members of council will cast their votes simultaneously by completing the member voting selection card as prepared and supplied by the clerk. All members of voting selection cards shall be identical in size, paper quality, and color, and shall be pre-printed with council member's name and include a place for the selected candidate. Upon completion of the member voting selection card, each council member shall return the member voting selection card directly to the clerk or designate. Whereupon a council member attends the meeting electronically, the process set out in 1.73 shall be modified as follows, and we were explained the information by Mr. Belchamber. Once all member voting selection cards from those council members physically present have been returned to the clerk, will then request that council members attending electronically to display their vote. If more than one council member attends electronically, the clerk will individually request each such council member to display their selection, and the order of such display will be in alphabetical order based upon surname. The objective of this is that we're going to be voting by ballot, but the ballot will be made public, and the public will know each member of council's vote. It's not going to be a secret ballot. It will be known publicly to comply with the Municipal Act and for transparency. Any questions so far? Conseiller Dan?
Through you, Madam Chair. Nigel, can you clarify basically what this means in real words? And I'll preface that by this. Does that mean that what we're going to do tonight is more or less the same process we did when we brought Councillor Roberge's name and then we voted on it and then we moved to the next person, and then we'll vote on it and then we'll go right down to 6 people? Is that the concept? Is that what this says?
Through your worship, no, this is a very different process. This is excuse me. This is a process that takes all of the candidates, considers them all at the same time, and then progressively reduces the number of candidates until there's a majority cast for one of the candidates. If there is no majority for one of the candidates, then, and there's a tie, then the clerk shall conduct a lot, and there's a prescription as to how the winning candidate to have the bylaw prepared for that candidate would be selected. So this is a very different process. But it doesn't involve secret ballots, because the votes or the selection of each of the candidates will be public. So it's not a secret ballot process, so it doesn't violate Section 244 of the Act. And it's an open process that attempts to treat everybody fairly.
So can you, supplemental, can you walk that through? So for instance, what'll happen is you'll put the names, 6 names, and then you'll ask each member to put the name on a piece of paper like this, identifying the person that they want, and that'll be it.
For the first round. So if person X, between the held up pieces of paper electronically and the pieces delivered to the clerk by the people in the room, if there's a majority for one, then that person moves on to the step of the appointment bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
However, if no one receives a majority, then you look at the bottom and determine whether or not anybody has received less than others. And if that happens, then they fall off the next ballot. If there's a tie, then there's a provision. If, like, for instance, if there were 6 people voting and it was 2-2-2, okay, then there would be a means of breaking that by a lottery to select who didn't continue to the next step. That's the way the process would work.
Thank you for clarifying that. It's a little bit.
In summary, it's the same process that we were adopting that when we were voting for appointing members from the community on committees. So if, just as a visual or an understanding of a scenario, as Mr. Belchamber stated, for 8 members that are voting, if a member gets, let's say, for example, 4 votes, another member gets 3 votes, another member gets 1 vote. Anyone that did not get any vote is eliminated from the process. And then we go back to the round of voting with a reduced pool of names to vote on.
Correct.
Are there any questions with that? Is that clear? And when we say majority, since we are 8 members of council voting, it means that successful candidate, if there be no tie breaking, would require 5 votes. I guess that would be majority. Okay. So I think we have a down path for the voting. In the event of a lottery.
Selection bylaw.
See you.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a question to Nigel through you. Let's say, I know you don't need to get 5 votes, because if someone gets 4, the other get 2, 2 and 1, then it's majority, right? If I'm correctly.
No, 4, 2, 2, and 1 adds up to 9. So 4 isn't a majority. 5 is a majority when it comes to 9.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions pertaining to the voting, the process for voting? No? Okay. So we can go to the lottery. And the lottery is adopted or applied, will be done if it's a tie vote. And there's a process that's been identified that the names of the candidates will be, it's going to be handled by the clerk or a designate, but in our case, it's going to be the clerk. The names are going to be on a piece of paper, which will be folded, inserted in a box or a container that we cannot see through, and then the name will be drawn. And the name that's being drawn will be the name that will be put on a resolution to adopt by bylaw to appoint a candidate to fill Ward 7. Any questions or comments? Councillor Alice?
Well, I just have a comment. It's not a question. Is if we come to that at the end for the public to show a sign of transparency, so that when you read the name, Madam Clerk, are you going to show it so public knows? And when you put the name in the box, the same thing, you're going to fold it because you don't want people to come back and say, right? So protect and try. I want to protect.
I'll do everything
Okay.
in the front.
Okay.
Okay. Any further questions? Est-ce qu'il y a aucune autre question? Conseiller Dan?
Question through you, Madam Mayor, to Nigel. Once this process is done, does it have to be ratified at a council meeting, or will we basically ratify it tonight?
Item 1 point, Your Worship, 1.7.8 says the appointment of the candidate shall be made by bylaw. By bylaw confirming the appointment will be enacted by council at the same meeting whereupon the selection has been made. That's the statement in the policy. The declaration of office required to be administered by the clerk could be done at the meeting if the person was in there. Otherwise, as directed by the council, well, that would be as within X number of days, for instance, or as soon as possible, words to that effect. I really need to draw your attention to the definition of lot, just so there's no confusion. The very last item under definitions. So if it gets to the clerk conducting a lot, and this can take a little bit of time, but it's important for to demonstrate fairness and to demonstrate that there's no special consideration by any party. And it's the name of a candidate where you're trying to determine someone by lot would be placed on 5 equal-sized pieces of paper of the same color, folded in half. And those 5 for each candidate would be placed in an opaque container. One would be drawn by the clerk or the clerk's designate. And the name of the candidate on the piece of paper drawn shall be the selected candidate. So that's very clear if you end up with the tie. And it may take a few minutes to do that. But I think that's very important to understand that part can't be rushed. And all of these pieces of paper, when you're done, there's no reason they stay as public records. There's no problem with that. And if somebody ever wanted to confirm that there were 4 of one and 5 of the other still in the box, they could actually do that. It's just an audit of the process. So it's Slister and others have well thought this one out, Your Worship.
Can you just quantify the issue on both sides pieces of paper? If we have a tie for 2, that means it's going to be 2 papers that are going to be inserted in the OPEC.
Or 5.
10.
I think, Your Worship, the clerk is prepared for that. So if you ask the clerk what she would do if she were required to conduct a lot, she can explain it to you right there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Belchamber. The way the policy is written, I will write the name of, if there's a tie, I will write the name of each of the persons 5 times. There'll be 5 pieces of paper with one name, 5 pieces of paper with the other name. All 10 papers will be folded identically and placed in a cardboard box. And I will actually, rather than drawing it myself, I will probably ask our treasurer to draw it just for complete clarity. Since I'm the one who prepared them and folded them, I'll ask someone else to draw that name.
Okay. Question on that matter, and I do have comments on that matter, but I'll leave Conseiller Dan first.
So the policy is what is going to bind council to the outcome of the lot. Am I correct, Nigel?
Yes, that's how it takes you to the end of the lot. And it also takes you to the policy commitment of the council to enact a bylaw at the same meeting.
Thank you.
Explain the reasoning of having one name added 5 times. The Sunridge policy was that the name of the candidates that were taught were inserted in a ballot drawn. So what's the reasoning of having, let's say, candidate A 5 times and candidate B 5 times? Is there a problem to put candidate A once and candidate B once?
Madam Mayor? Yeah, yes.
I can respond to that question. Through you, Madam Chair, I asked the same question to our solicitor, and he explained that it doesn't change the odds. However, it does create a better level of transparency where no one could say that a certain paper was folded a certain way or that there was any, it just removes, it just makes it more transparent than if there was just 2 pieces of paper in the box. There's 10 pieces of paper in the box. Equal amounts, creating just a more, he said, just a more transparent process.
Okay. I mean, define transparent, but
I think I can understand that because, I mean, if there's only would be 2, and let's say that you're the one that's putting in the box and one candidate that you prefer better, whatever, you put in F, the other one you put in 4, and that she's your buddy over there and she's pointed out, so with 5, like you said, I think it will be, because the chance is the same, it's 50-50%.
okay, but as a point of clarification, it cannot be folded in 4. It's clear, it's folded
Well, it doesn't
in
matter.
half.
Well,
Well,
that's
the
what I'm
policy, that's what it states.
Yeah.
Are there,
They all folded in 4.
was that easy?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Are there any comments pertaining to that issue? Members are comfortable with that? Okay. So we have the motion,
I have another question.
Consadis.
That's not in there, and I would like to see it. The last time I guess it was an oversight that we should be very clear that when we're talking about the participant that would be asked a question, that they have the choice to answer in French, and even if they choose to, it doesn't matter, but it's got to be clear in the policy. That is the choice of the respondent, the participant, to utilize the language that you choose, French or English, or if there's another one they want to use. I think it's important that we have it part of our bylaw. Even if we have a bylaw, just to be clear.
Okay,
So-
so,
Maybe 1.5, address council in the language of their choice.
Yeah, I think it's just
They're not
because we forgot. Yeah.
I think that 1.5, 1.6, there should be a reference candidates can either present themselves or respond to questions in the language of his or her choice.
Your worship, do you already have a policy declaring the municipality to be municipal council or the municipal corporation to be bilingual?
Yes, we do.
That would cover it.
Okay,
So you really don't need to add it. It's there. It's there already, if that's the policy.
okay. But I guess maybe, like the questions that were asked, in fairness to the nominees last week, they were asked strictly in English.
Correct.
So I guess maybe, would it be incorrect to have it clearly outlined in this policy? Or is it just,
Your worship, I wasn't suggesting it was incorrect. I was just suggesting that it would be redundant or unnecessary, but if it's council's wish to include it in the policy, then it's fine. It does no harm.
okay, Conseil Denis?
Yes, since we went through the process, and I guess we learned from the process that the bilingualism was skipped because the question was not asked in French. I think it's important to put it in the bylaw. And the next time there won't be any confusion. It's not a big deal to put it in the bylaw. even though we have a bylaw.
Yeah.
Bilingual, so I don't think it's a big issue, just put it in there, and then there won't be any confusion next time.
Okay, so we have the motion. As I said, we have the motion to adopt the policy. From the discussion that we had, there were two issues that were identified as changes. One was the exclusion of the 1.4 pertaining to having candidates in adjacent rooms. And the other one is to have an inclusion pertaining to bilingualism for the presentation or the questions to the nominees, to the candidates. So that means it would be an amendment to the policy. I would need a mover and a seconder for the amendments. Conseiller Lise, Conseiller Yvon. And we have to vote on the amendments.
That's a question.
So, do you want me to just summarize? So the proposed amendments to the policy would be deletion of paragraph 1.4, which related to sequestering the candidates, an addition to paragraph 1.5 and 1.6 to provide candidates to be asked and to answer questions in the language of their choice, English or French.
Conseiller Denis?
And Mayor, that was my point at the beginning, is that we're putting the two amendments together. And my point was to vote on each amendment separately. So if you agree with one, you don't for the other one. That was my point originally. So we're bundling up the amendments, right? Why? You know, if I don't agree with 1.4, that means I have to vote against 1.5. I don't think the amendments should be bundled.
Procedurally, we
Yes.
normally deal with one amendment at a time and not more than two amendments on a set motion. That's how we've dealt with it in the past, right?
Typically, we only have one.
So, you know, if I were to follow procedures, Conseiller Denis is saying he feels more comfortable to vote on the amendments that are being proposed one by one, and we can have two amendments. So, you know what? What I'll do is if we follow procedures, we have an amendment. An initial amendment was to remove 1.4 from the policy. Okay, is there a mover and a seconder for that? Conseiller Lise, Conseiller Yvon. So the first amendment is to remove the 1.4 from the policy. Call it to a vote.
Favor?
A yes or no?
Well,
Yes,
okay,
remove
yes. Which one?
Okay, the amendment proposed is to remove 1.4 from the policy.
Who's in favor?
There's a mover and a seconder, so who's in favor of removing 1.4 from the policy? Cheated. Now, there's a mover and a seconder pertaining to the issue of bilingualism.
I would like to have a recorded vote on that one, Madam.
So the motion on the floor is to add bilingualism provisions to paragraphs 1 and 5 to allow candidates to have the questions asked and to answer in either English or French. Councillor Yvon, or Councillor Duhaime,
Yes.
Councillor Fisher,
No,
Councillor Larrabee,
We already got a policy of that, so.
Councillor Larrabee,
Yes, put it in French also, but it's already in our policy. I don't think wasting time here.
Conseiller Rowley, just vote, and once we're at the vote, we
Councillor
abstain from comments.
Councillor Mallette,
Yes,
Councillor Ravita,
Yes.
Councillor Denise Senecal,
Yes.
Councillor Lee Senecal,
Oui.
Mayor Joanne Savage.
Yes.
Carried.
Okay, so there's one amendment approved. Now we proceed with the actual policy.
So, I'll just reread the motion. So, I'll just reread the policy. It is moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Denise Senecal. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2022-57 to being a bylaw to adopt a council vacancy policy as amended shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Those in favor, aye. The carried.
I need, before we proceed, I need to,
You want to be excused?
I want to be excused for 2 minutes.
Please
Do I need to
proceed.
state the reason? Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to be proceeding to the vote. And for the vote, then I pass it on to the clerk.
Thank you.
I gotta wait for me or?
We'll wait.
We'll wait. We're just going to get organized.
5 minutes. recess.
So I think everybody has on their desk some ballots. There's way more there than you probably need, but I didn't want to go back to the photocopier. For those that are in the room, you will write the name of one individual on that vote. I'll come and pick them up. The persons who are remote, if you don't have a blank piece of white paper, now's the time to go get one. You will write the name of the individual on the white paper, large enough so that when you hold it up, I can read it. And I'll collect the ballots here, and before I read those out, I will ask the members, the remote members, in alphabetical order to please raise their piece of paper and show them to me so that I can record on the tally sheet who they voted for. Is that clear? And then I'll read out the paper ballots.
I'll see you, Dan.
Through you, Madam. Melanie, do you want to test drive this to see, because I have a background and it may affect my vote,
Um,
Can you,
white on black? Like, can you see this?
no, you need to hold it back closer to your body, Councillor Dan. Can you turn off the background? Is it possible?
I knew you were going to ask me. I don't.
Okay, I can see that. Actually, hold it against your shirt again. Yes, I can read it.
That's fine.
You want to
You
go
have a
get a
Sharpie?
marker?
If you had a Sharpie, it would help.
There you
I'll
go.
go get a marker.
Thank you.
I'll be right back.
I'll see you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, when we put the name forward on a piece of paper, you have to put our name also with the candidate's name?
No, you don't have to put your name because you're going to be lifting your paper. So the clerk is going to be able to see Conseiller Leo is lifting and proposing this name.
Pardon me, Madam Mayor, I didn't understand.
That you do not have to put your name on the paper because you're lifting your own paper.
Okay, thank you.
Is it over?
Nope. So, are we going to proceed, Mr. Belchamber?
It's up to you, your worship. Is everybody returned to their stations?
There's only Conseiller Dan that is not there. The other members are all here, and I believe he was gone to get a marker.
I think it's important that you wait until everybody is there,
That's correct.
just so there's no question.
Personally, it well, I'll refrain my personal opinion. I think it would have been easier if everyone would have been physically here. But we have it in our policy, and the policy has been approved.
Correct.
Okay, so those who are in the room, you have ballots. If you make your choice and write the name of the individual, I'll give everybody a minute. Those who are home, if you could write it on the paper, turn the paper over in front of you and wait till I ask you to raise your paper, please. And if you could write it big enough so I can read it, and my eyes are old. Thank you.
Just a quick question. The ballots we have, we put the name. Do we have to sign the ballot?
For those who are here, yes.
Okay. Just to make sure.
Or
Madam Mayor, through you, if she can't see the name properly, can we say the name? That-
Write it down, and if there's a problem for the clerk to see, the clerk will ask.
Okay.
Or
Thank
advise.
I think, Your Worship, the issue is the names of the 6 candidates that people can consider writing down.
Well, just actually, I'm going to put those up on the screen just so everybody has that.
That would be good.
I'm going to do that right now.
And those are in alphabetical order as required. Very good. Madam Clerk, do you wish to have surname only or first name and second name? Is there an issue if it's just the surname that people write down in big letters?
That's fine.
Yeah.
As long as it's clear. They're all pretty different names.
Hold it in 2 million.
Yes, please. Mine's are hard. I can't sign. Stop the screen share. Okay, and I'm going to start with the persons at home to record that. So I will begin, let me get myself organized. I'm going to begin with Councillor Fisher. Councillor Larrabee. Councillor Mallette. Councillor Rivita. Hold it back, please. Yep. Okay. So going on in alphabetical order, Councillor Duhaime, Fernand Pellerin. Councillor Denis Senecal, Fern Pellerin. Councillor Lee Senecal, Fern Pellerin. Mayor Joanne Savage, Fern Pellerin. We are at a 4-4. Aye. So the next step will be I will write the name of the 2 tied individuals on 5 pieces of paper. And then I will fold them in half and I will place them in the cardboard box. And then I will ask our treasurer to pull one name out. So, and I'll just, I don't know if you can zoom in on me. I'll hold them all up.
Oh, okay. Suggest something, if you don't mind, Mel, like if you write let's say you say Norm first, then you say, so to mix it out, not the five first name and then the five after that to be, it's gotta be more easy to mix it out. Because if you put Norm 5 times in a row or the other one after that, if you put in the box right there, it's hard to mix up. So. to
Oh,
give
do
it
one
equal-
at a time, go back and forth, sure.
Yeah, back and forth to
Sure.
give a chance to be mixed the right way. The rest is up to the chance.
Norman Roberge,
Your time.
Fernand Pellerin, Norman Roberge, Fernand Pellerin, Norman Roberge, Fernand Pellerin, Norman Roberge, Fernand Pellerin, Norman Roberge, Fernand Pellerin. Appreciate it. You're gonna come to me?
I should be holding the box now.
Norman Roberge.
Congratulations.
I don't know if anybody wants to inspect the rest of the box.
No.
Okay,
So now that we're done with that process, we're gonna be ready to adopt the bylaw to appoint a candidate to fill Ward 7. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank all the 6 individuals that submitted their name, that put up with this council at the last meeting, and for your interest in modern making. Kudos to each and every one of you. And at the same time, congratulations to the candidate. It was a fair, transparent process. And I also want to say thank you to Mr. Belchamber for his patience, due diligence, and providing us guidance to facilitate this process. So we'll need a mover and a seconder for the motion. Conseiller Leo. Conseiller Yvon.
it is moved by Councillor Mallette and seconded by Councillor Duhaime. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2022-58, being a bylaw to appoint Norman Roberge, councillor for Ward 7 for the remainder of the 2018-2022 council term, shall come into force and take effect on the date it is passed.
Those in favor, en faveur? Adopted, carried. So we still have 2 more motions to adopt. And that means our next regular council meeting, we can make the arrangements for the inauguration right at the beginning of the meeting. If there's no objection from the council. And then this way we can proceed after with regular business. So I need a mover and a seconder for both adjournment bylaws. Conseiller Ball, Conseiller Lees.
Madam Mayor, I think Mr. Knight wants to say something.
Okay, my apologies, Mr.
Sure.
Belcher.
Sorry, I didn't wish to interrupt, Madam Mayor, but I just like to say thank you. Congratulations for adopting the process and finding a way to make a decision. 2 things. I had never been completely through West Nipissing before, and I had an absolutely delightful drive through the entire, or much of the entire municipality last week. It was quite enjoyable. But I'd also like to indicate that very impressed and very pleased with the cooperation shown by your clerk. She was very professional. She has an excellent working relationship with your solicitor, and is very easy to work with on, let's say we say controversial, difficult, or matters that can take you down different paths. So I'd just like to say thank you for that and pass that along. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you so much for those comments, greatly appreciated, and congratulations, and I commend our clerk as well. So, yeah, I think we were at the mover and the seconder to adjourn, right? Conseiller Lees, Conseiller Ball.
It is moved by Councillor Lee Senecal and seconded by Councillor Yvonne Dehaene. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2022-59, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on the 15th of June 2022, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Those in favor, up 5. Adopted, carried.
It is moved by Councillor Lee Senecal and seconded by Councillor Dehaene. Be it resolved, the council meeting held on June the 15th, 2022, be adjourned.
Any objections? Aucune objection. Hearing none. Carried. Adopted. Bonsoir. Good evening.
Thank you.